Hello and welcome back to the Ground Up Advanced Flight Tutorials. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and today we're going to be doing our second solo lesson, so our second solo flight. And in this one we're going to be using a standard instrument departure. We're going to be flying from point A to point B using some waypoints, and then we are going to be using a standard terminal approach, a standard arrival route as it were, into Echo Golf November X-Ray, which is the airport that we've been doing a lot of our training at. So that's East Midlands Airport. We are starting at Echo Golf Mike November. Is it Mike November? I think it is Mike November. So that is, oh sorry, November Mike, that's correct. Echo Golf November Mike, which is Leeds-Bradford Airport, which is sort of towards the north of England. So we're going to be starting somewhere in the north of England, not quite as high up as for example Newcastle Airport or anything like that, but it is higher up than the likes of Manchester Airport. So we're going to be flying out of Leeds-Bradford Airport, then we're going to be flying down towards East Midlands Airport. Now, very important to stress in this video, I am not going to be giving you direct instructions all the time in this video, nor is this video going to be one smooth continuous flight. This video is going to be cut up more than likely if there are points that it needs to be cut up on. So for example, if there is an area where it's taking a long time to fly, I'm going to be cutting that bit out if we're just going in a straight line. So do not try and fly in this video, do not try and copy this video absolutely like for like, because you're not going to be able to do that. Like for like is not going to work in this one. For that you need to be looking at all the other videos previous to this. This is now where we're getting into things where you're doing things yourself. The first solo I talked you through it. This solo I'm not going to be talking you through it so much, I'm just going to be guiding you through it. However, at the end of the solo, if you are one of my Patreons in the $5 bracket range, please feel free to record your video of your flight and then put it onto the FST channel on my Discord server, and I am more than happy to look through that flight and give you some feedback upon it. If you are not a Patreon and you wish to do this, please feel free to jump onto my Patreon scheme, even just for a month. If you donate the $5 for 1 month, you'll have access for 1 month to the Flight Sim Tutorials channel, and on that you can post your video and I am more than happy to look through it and see what my opinion is of your flight, whether it was really good, whether there was mistakes made, or whether you just need more practice, which is something that I think a lot of people would be needing. So all that being said, I think that pretty much allows me to move on to the flight briefing, so let's get on to that. The flight briefing today is Echo Golf November Mike to Echo Golf November X-Ray. That's Leeds-Bradford Airport to East Midlands Airport. We are going to be taking off from runway 14 at Leeds-Bradford. The weather is just a fair day, so if you want to set it up just for a fair day, that would be fine. Fair weather, light winds, not too many clouds, everything looks pretty good. It's going to be a nice, easy flight. We are going to be using the Pole 2 X-Ray departure, so that's the standard instrument departure, the Pole 2 X-Ray. All the charts are going to be linked in the description box below. Make sure that before you take off you have downloaded all those charts, you have Sky Vector up on a phone or something like that, and you know where you are flying. From the Pole 2 X-Ray departure, we're going to get to the Pole Hill VOR. From the Pole Hill VOR we're going to be joining on to the Yankee 70 route, which goes westbound. Now this might be interesting because if you've already looked at Sky Vector, you'll know that East Midlands Airport is southbound, but for the training purposes we are going to be going westbound and then we are going to be going eastbound. So we're going to join up to a Yankee 70 all the way up to the Collid waypoint, the Collid intersection. We're then going to be turning towards the Lima 70 westbound, and Lima 70 westbound we are going to be following up to Guntu. Guntu is just off the coast of England, and at Guntu we are going to be turning south towards the November 864 airway, and that's going to be all the way into Wallasey. And from Wallasey we're going to be using a star, the ROKUP star, into East Midlands Airport, and the ROKUP star that I'm probably looking at more than likely is going to be the ROKUP 1 Alpha. So we'll see on the way. I might tune in ROKUP 1 Charlie, but more than likely it's going to be ROKUP 1 Alpha that we are going to be using. So that's the one we want. From there we are planning to land on runway. Which runway would I like to land at? I think we'll land on runway 27 at East Midlands Airport. So that's our flight briefing. Let's get ourselves underway. Again, I want you to watch all the previous videos to ensure that you know what you're doing. We're going to be squawking 7,000 today. As you can see, I will be switching on my head tracking, and hopefully the head tracking does work a treat today. It does so far. So we've got 7,000 is on our squawk, and I am going to be tuning in our first couple of setups, which is going to be Leeds-Bradford and Pole Hill. So let's do that now. So 1110 or 110.9, so that's 110.9 is going to be Leeds. There we go, and you can see that's already sorted out. We're going to switch to DME. We're going to leave DME to 1 first because we are going to need to use it, and then we're going to switch over to DME 2. This is going to be Pole Hill, and the frequency for Pole Hill is 112.1. There we go, that should tune in Pole Hill. The radial that we want to Pole Hill is going to be the 082 radial, so we're going to tune that in immediately. So we're going to go 082. Let's see. There we go, 082. Also, I'm going to ensure that we have a heading hold set up initially to be runway heading, which is 14. So there we go, that's absolutely fine. And then we're going to take off and sort ourselves out. However, I do also want to see if, per chance, I can tune in the ADF to 402, which is the ADF for Leeds-Bradford Airport. That's 4. That's 4. $402. Let's see if that actually works. It might not, because it's supposed to be 402.5, but you never know. So that's at least going to give us some information. There, now having a look at this departure chart, I know that I have to fly out for 2 nautical miles on runway heading before starting to join on to Pole Hill 082. I need to be above 3,000 by distance marker 14. What else do I need to know? Climb straight ahead, cross Pole Hill distance marker 14 at or above 3,000. Crossing Pole Hill distance marker 10 at or above 3,500. Pole Hill VOR at 7,000, so we are going to get to 7,000, and I think we are going to hold 7,000 today. So that's our task. Right, everything seems to be okay. Let's have a look around the aeroplane. Flaps look good. Other side, flaps are good. Control surfaces, they are working. Good. Elevator feels good. Rudder feels good. You see that slight movement. Everything looks good on this. Let's see if we can... We'll leave that as it is. Nav 2, 17 miles to Pole Hill. Great. So we'll tune that in at some point. This, I'm going to ensure that's already in Nav 2. Okay, there we go. Nav, is that off? Hang on. There's Nav 2. There we go. So remember, your autopilot might look different. In fact, your autopilot more than likely will look different because this is a very old autopilot system, which is another reason why I've picked this particular aircraft, so that you guys can start using your own autopilots and your own suggestions, your own thoughts for the autopilot. Double check everything is okay, which it does seem to be. And let's get ourselves underway. Now, it's been a long time since I've flown this aircraft, so this is going to be a very interesting start for me. Let me bring my chart up again. It's also very warm today, so that I know exactly what I'm doing. It's 2 miles before the turn. It's fine. Okay. Use that slight rudder, of course. I'm going to take off at 75 knots today. There's 70, there's 75. Lift the nose, and we are up. Nice and smooth. I forgot how smooth this aircraft is. Positive rate. Gear up. Flaps in. Let's get ourselves a nice 500 foot per minute climb. So remember, we're going to maintain runway heading until we are 2 miles out. At the moment we are 0.5 of a mile. Just bringing that trim in to ensure that we get a very smooth flight going. There we go. That's pretty good. Good climb speed. 1 mile. 1.2. 400 foot per minute climb rate. Everything looks good. 1.7. 1.8. 1.9. I'm going to switch to that, and we'll begin our turn towards our radial. Remember, we don't want the nose to drop too much. It's going to ease it through, and we'll wait to intercept that radial nice and gently. So we're going to level out just at that point, just to ease onto that radial now. Continuing the climb. You're clearly not on the radial yet, so we're just going to move over ever so slightly to try and intercept it. I'm going to continue climbing. 14 miles, we've got to be at 3,000 feet. We're currently 16.8 miles. At 2,000, we are doing well. At this point, I'm going to switch on the autopilot and heading hold. And I'm going to ensure that heading hold is set for this exactly as we've got it, which is a heading of 24 until we get onto the radial, and then we will be fine. We're going to continue our climb at 90 knots as we do this departure. Again, make sure you're following the standard instrument departure charts properly. Ensure that you've got everything set as you want. Now, I no longer need Leeds-Bradford, so I am already going to be tuning in the next one that I am going to require. And that next one is going to be... I'm going to have a look at what the next one's going to be. How are we looking? 15 miles, 500 feet to go. That should be pretty good for us. Alright, we are almost on the correct path too. 400 feet. We're doing okay. I'm going to increase my rate of climb just a little bit. There we go. Again, I'm using the trim. 14 miles. We are slightly below, but it's okay. Just slightly. I'm going to try and compensate for that by putting in a little bit more power. There we go. Increasing that rate of climb. How far away are we from Pole Hill? We are 10 miles away from Pole Hill. And we are now in nav mode, which is exactly what we wanted. I'm going to bring it back to 10 miles. We've got 3,000 feet to go, so it is going to be a little bit close. Looking back at the instruction, it is 7,000 feet that we want. As you can see, we've now lost the glide slope for Leeds-Bradford, but that's okay because we're not going to be using that much more. So we're definitely above the 3,500 mark. Do not climb above flight level 70 without ATC, that's okay. There we go, we are now on the correct radial to Pole Hill. Now this message is annoying, but that's okay. I'm going to sort that out. It's time to see what the next setup's going to be. So we're going to be using Yankee 70 and then Lima 70. So Lima 70, it's interesting because there really isn't a there isn't anything that's going to be usable on that, in terms of it is one of those new style intersections using RNAV and not general waypoints. So what we are going to do is, let's see, we're going to tune in Wallasey on 114.1. So that's going to be the next one we're going to need. 114.1. There we go, that's Wallasey. There you go, that's tuned in already, and we are going to set this up for the 357. We're going to set this up for 357. So almost, so we're going to be going almost south. As a matter of fact, let's tune that in the opposite way then. So we'll go 180. How far away? 5 from Pole Hill. That's fine. Right, so that's 180. So now we're going to go 177. Should give us 357. So now all we're waiting for is we're going to be waiting for that to intercept. But the way we're going to be doing this is at Pole Hill we are going to switch to a heading of 247. We're going to be going down a Yankee 70. So we've got to be wary of that. So I'm already putting in 247 on the heading hold, which is, that's 240, 245, 6, 7. 7? That's 7. 247. With 3 miles to go, I think we should be able to get to 7,000 feet, which is where we need to be at. I will bring a little bit more on the trim. And then we're going to be turning along Yankee 70. I want you to be again using Sky Vector to ensure that you know what you are doing and how far you need to go. And I will instruct you at Colid what we need to do with regards to the Lima 70 route. Which, looking at it now, I sort of regret. I regret picking that route, but that's okay. 2 miles to go. It's a very nice view outside. Farms are a little bit too green and a little too less in the way of houses around the farms, but that's okay. This isn't here. We're not here to criticize Flight Sim World. We're here to learn about flight. And there we go. With 1.6 miles to go, we are at 7,000 feet. I will now go into altitude mode. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit. Let's go a little bit higher first. Let's go a little bit higher, and then we'll go into altitude mode. 1 nautical mile to go. Now we'll go into altitude hold. There we go. Again, this is a little trick on this aircraft. It's not something you can use normally. Right, we'll now go into heading. Hopefully that's worked. 247 should have worked quite nicely for us. And we will switch this on a from. And that's 251, 250, 249, 248. Is that 247? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, and we'll get ourselves onto that very easily. Now we're looking for 25 miles. We're looking for 25 miles from Yankee 70. So we're going to continue along this for 25 miles. At 17 miles, we've just come up to the Croft intersection, which intersects with the Lima 612 southbound and the Papa 16 both north and southbound. This airport you see at that river estuary is Preston Airport, and the city that you see over to the left hand side is the city of Manchester and Liverpool. Manchester is just out in that direction, and Liverpool is up with the estuary. Liverpool Airport should also be possibly in sight, though it is hidden by the clouds. At this point there are 2.5 miles to go until we switch onto the Lima 70 route. So for the Lima 70 route, because it doesn't have a VOR that we can tune in due to it being an RNAV route, so one of the newer routes, we're going to tune in a heading of 275, which should be pretty close to the actual route. Now we are sticking at flight level 70, so going to 275 on the radial, and we are going to be following 275 along until we intercept the November 864, which is a 357 radial to Wallasey. This is going to take us just past the shoreline of England, so that's how we're going to know that we're coming up close to our destination, or our next maneuver, as it were. At this point I'm going to go into heading mode once again. And the aircraft will begin to turn as required. I'm now going to switch the DME into nav 1, as that's the one we are going to want. And as you can see, we are 17.3 miles away from Wallasey, but we are going in a different direction. Now at this point in time we also probably want to be trying to tune in, or preparing to tune in, other frequencies. I have 368 on the ADF. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but that is a possible frequency that we can use. If we can't use it, it doesn't really matter. But after that, we are going to start to require needing to tune in, for example, the Trent VOR. So we are going to tune in Trent right now, which I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with as 115.7. So we're going to tune in 115.7 right now. 115.7 is in. Obviously that's going to be set up like that. We are going to tune in the 268 inbound. So for that we want the 268 on the opposite side due to the direction we're going to be flying. Now whilst we're doing this, we need to be well aware of this needle moving, because it is going to start moving fairly soon. So that's 270, and that should be 268. So that's the 268 inbound. That is now tuned in. And that is for the ROKUP 1 Alpha approach. So there is the shoreline right ahead of us, and you can see that little outcrop that way out of Liverpool. You can see that out there. That is where the Wallasey VOR is located. So we know roughly that we need to be leaving this bit of shoreline, and we are going to be alongside the shore just there. You can see the edge there. We are not going to be going past that. The VOR is somewhere just about there. Now a good way to tell that we're coming up towards the VOR radial is by looking at this, and on Sky Vector it does clearly show that the interception point, the gun 2 intersection, is 12 nautical miles away from Wallasey, and you can see that we are currently 11.6 nautical miles away from Wallasey, but that figure is starting to not drop as fast as it once was, and in fact it will be climbing again. As that starts climbing, we know that we're going to be coming up very close to the VOR, so that's another way of knowing that we are close to the VOR, as well as that needle or the radial that we want. So 11.4, that will be going to 11.5. now obviously there's the shoreline just below us, so we've only got a few miles left to run, probably another 2 miles, or I'd say 2.5 miles left to run before we have to turn in. However, since we are in clouds, as you can see, we are not really able to use the shoreline as a reference point. And that's why all these instruments are really, really important to use. That VOR needle has now come alive. And this is also going to show us just how far off the Lima 70 route we were. So at the moment it looks like the Lima 70 route was about 500-600 yards in that direction, which isn't too bad. 11.3, we're about 0.7 of a nautical mile off. So actually it's more than that, it's almost 1,000 yards in that direction. At this point we are going to go turn our heading like so. And we will now go into nav 1, nav mode. That should continue turning us around very nicely towards the Wallasey VOR. So you can see we have 11 nautical miles left to run. And since we are in clouds, we can't even tell if we're turning, so that's why these instruments are all important. Now at the Wallasey VOR we are going to be tuning into a completely new heading. This is now going to be the star part, so this is the ROKUP 1 Alpha standard arrival, and we are going to be going on a radial of 126, so I'm going to tune that in now on the radial. It's important to have everything done early, very important. We'll go 125, 126. The earlier you get things done, the easier it is going to be for you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tune this up to 126, and we'll be able to fly that in all the way up to the White Gate NDB, which doesn't seem to be coming on alive on this, so that's something that concerns me slightly. Let's just double check to make sure everything's okay. It doesn't seem to be coming alive, so that's a slight concern, but I do know how to do it without the NDB, so if the NDB is not active, we'll still be able to do it. There's the outcrop that I was talking about, and the VOR is literally dead ahead of us, just about there. And so we'll be turning in on this. In roughly 7 miles. I've got 1.3 nautical miles or 1.2 nautical miles to go. Got some major turbulence. The aircraft is now going to start turning in the right direction to where we need to go. So that's going to be a heading of 120. For now, I'm going to ensure that that's into heading mode, like so. And we are now going to tune this up to the right heading that we need for this, which is going to be, what was it again? Was it 126? Yes, 126. So let's tune that into 126. And we'll see just how close we are to that radial. There's the 126. And we will now intercept that by switching into nav mode. That there is Liverpool Airport. That's not something we have to worry about. We are way above its airspace. All we're going to do is get ourselves back on, using the navigation computer, back on the right radial. So now we have 22 miles to run along the ROKUP 1 Alpha to the Whitegate ADF, or the NDB, which doesn't seem to be working. So that's okay. And then we're going to be turning to a heading of 130 until we intercept the Trent 268 radial inbound. And we should be, if everything goes to plan, we should be intercepting that 23 nautical miles away from the Trent VOR. So we're going to ensure that we have 130 set on this, which is that right there. There's 130. When we get to the Nugra intersection, which is the intersection with the Whitegate NDB following out from 130 and the Trent VOR radial 268 inbound, we are going to start descending the aircraft to 4,000 feet, I think. And we'll descend the aircraft to 4,000 feet at that point. With 1 mile to go from the Whitegate NDB. The NDB did not come up on my ADF, so that's okay, we don't have to worry about that. We are just going to turn to a heading of 130. We do have a slight crosswind. I have noticed a slight crosswind, so I am going to give it a slight correction and give it a heading of 131. And I am going to do that now. So I'm going to switch that into heading mode, and we are good to go. Now, again, I'm going to switch this over to nav 2. Definitely in nav 2, and we're going to now wait until we get to the Nugra intersection, which is 15 nautical miles away, or a further 15 nautical miles away from Whitegate. So roughly we know that we're going to have 37 nautical miles on this before we get to that intersection. Just to double check what the OBS is on this. 88? No, we want 86. There we go, just double check to make sure you've got this right. It's always important to double check the next stage, because sometimes, like that, you can make mistakes. See another airport out there. If I'm correct, could that be Manchester Airport? That might be Manchester Airport. Not too sure though. We have some military airspace on this side. Don't have to worry about that though, because we are well clear of that airspace. So, nothing to worry about. We're now only 3 miles away, just about. Mark, from being 35 miles away from the initial star that we used, which is of course the Wallasey. As you can see that the VOR now, if I just sort out my head tracking a moment, as you can see the VOR has come alive, and we are going to be switching onto that radial very, very soon. So now at this point I'm going to now switch this into nav 2 again. If I can click it, there we go. And you can see it says 25.2 nautical miles. Now I did say in total we wanted to be 25 miles away? So we haven't done too badly at all. Let's have another quick look. It was 23 nautical miles away. So with the direction we're going and the way we're coming onto this, it looks like we've done a pretty good job of getting ourselves along the ROKUP 1 Alpha and staying along it despite not having a working ADF, or at least that particular NDB for Whitegate out of service. So this is just double check to make sure. For me this is in nav 2, which it is. We've got that as 2, so it is going to be flying towards it, and now we can start thinking about bringing the aircraft down. Now I am going to bring it down to 5,000 feet. I know I initially said 4,000. I think I'm going to bring it down to 5,000 feet for now, and then at Trent I might start lowering it a little bit further. There's 23.2 nautical miles, 23.1, and we are almost bang on that VOR. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go into nav mode, and that should intercept the VOR quite nicely for us. And there it goes. Alright, so now we just have to fly towards Trent, the Trent VOR, which is going to be 23 nautical miles, and at this point in time I'm also going to now tune in 109.35, which is the ILS for East Midlands Airport. So 109.35 is dialed in. There we go. Obviously at the moment there's nothing working on it, but that will come alive for us soon. I've also put in 353 in hopes that it will work. 353 is one of the locator NDBs for East Midlands, and now I know the other one works, and I know because I've used it. So let's see if this one works, and that is on the east side of the airport. So at this point we're still following the ROKUP 1 Alpha star up to Trent, and at this point we are also, once we get to Trent it's going to be a little bit confusing, so I am going to vector us in somewhat into the airport. Nothing too major. Now, having a look around, I believe we're going over the city of Stoke-on-Trent and the surrounding towns around Stoke. So Manchester is that way, in fact you can just about see it in the distance, and Birmingham is that way. which I don't think you can see. You can see a power station though, but you can't see Birmingham Airport. Now, as you can see, we are headed towards Trent VOR fairly quickly. Is that the city of Derby? It's possible, which means that the airport is not too far from where we are. Now, I think once we get 11 miles away, I'm going to start the descent. So we are currently 17.8 miles away. Also, this is a good time to now start our landing briefing. So we are going to be landing. We need to look at the initial approach procedures for runway 27 without radar control from Trent. So it looks like we are going to be joining in, and we're going to try and get a cat. We're going to try and go Cat A and Cat B. Looks like they want us above 3,000 feet at the 24.8 nautical miles away from Trent, in the opposite direction that is, along the 118 radial. Now, looking at the approach, they would rather we go 115.7, yet that's the frequency. They'd rather we go on a 191 radial to ROKUP, or along the ROKUP 1 Alpha. However, in this case, what I am going to do is I am going to try and descend actually to 4,000 feet. I'm going to descend to 4,000 feet, then we're going to go 118. So once we get to Trent, we're going to actually go directly on the 118 radial as if we're being vectored in, and we're going to skip, if you're looking at the charts, we're going to skip the area around the hold and the last part of the approach. So you can see that there is Trent radial 113 to ROKUP, or the Trent radial 0901 to finish the ROKUP 1 Alpha at the Dipso junction, or at the Dipso intersection. We are going to ignore those. We are actually going to go Trent 118, and we are going to continue our descent down to 3,000. Now, all I want to know, which would be very handy, is how far away is that going to be? It's 24.8 nautical miles from Trent. So if we get ourselves down to 5,000 feet and then lower, then just keep descending at Trent. That sounds like a good idea. The localizer has come alive, so that's good. We are 13 nautical miles away from Trent, so at this point I am going to start descending the aircraft. So I'm going to switch our altitude control off. And we're going to go into a descent. A nice, gentle descent. There we go. 300 foot per minute. We are 5 minutes away. So at 300 foot per minute, we should be descending. In fact, I tell you what, if we are 5 minutes away at our current speed, 500 foot per minute is going to drop us 2,500 feet. We need to drop 2,000 feet. So if we go for a 400 foot per minute descent, we should be okay. So that's what we're going to choose. That's what we're going to try and get. There we go. We're going to ensure that we bring that power back accordingly as we begin our descent. It's going to be a nice, as you can see, a very smooth descent. And all we're going to do is we're just going to continue descending the aircraft. We're going to set this up to be 118. Like so. 500 foot per minute rate of descent is pretty good. I want to slow the aircraft down further. So I'm going to, as you can hear, I'm reducing that. At this point in time, I am going to put my landing lights back on, which I switched off earlier. This still hasn't come alive, but that's okay. We are descending a little bit too quickly now, so I'm going to bring that descent rate back. Again, using the trim, very important. This is something I taught in lesson 4 or 5, I think it might be in lesson 5 that I taught about using the trim, and then we used it on the first solo too. reduce the power again a little bit more. 135 knots is not bad. That is the city of Derby. And you might just be able to, and possibly I think I can make out the airport. That's okay though. Doesn't matter if we can't make it out just yet. So we're looking for 5,000 feet at Trent. After which we have 24.8 miles to make it down to 3. Which, if we're doing 6 miles in 2 minutes, in fact, we're going to check this out for us now. So when that goes down to 1 minute, we're going to see exactly. We're going to try and do some working out, some calculations on the fly. It's a decent descent rate still. Well, it's 133 knots. I'm assuming we're doing 2 nautical miles, about 2.5 nautical miles a minute, or 2.2 nautical miles a minute. So if we try and get for 120, if we try and head for 120 knots, then we're going to go 4 nautical. I'm saying 4 nautical miles. Wait, that's not right. 1 minute away, 4 nautical miles. That's interesting. Right, we are. The glide slope has come alive for us too. And we're coming up to 5,000 feet as we want. So it's a really smooth. I am using the trim. We're maintaining and we're keeping control. Very important. We're keeping control of our speed. We're going to now reduce this descent rate to only 300 feet a minute. We're going to see how this works out for us, or even 200 feet per minute. So 5,000 or above is what they would want us at if we're going to dipso, which of course we're not, which is exactly why I've changed it. Alright. So at this point it's as if we're being vectored in. Nice and smooth. As you can see, we've half leveled out, but we've also slowed the aircraft down, which is so I can put a little bit more power into that. There we go, just a little bit. 1 nautical mile away. I am now going to again switch into heading hold, and we're going to now keep a careful eye on this. There we go. Need to keep a very close eye on that. Bring that nose up again. There we go. Okay. Don't climb. We don't want it to climb. We just want it to continue descending. And we're going to tune this in to be a new frequency, which is, or sorry, a new radial. That radial is going to be 118 away. So we're going to go for from, and we're going to tune in 118. There we go. I'll go back to nav mode for that. Hopefully that should handle it exactly as we want. I think that's the airport. Again, with an aircraft like this, because there's no vertical speed control or anything, you have to be careful. That's another reason I picked this aircraft. It's quite interesting to fly. You have to have some control over it at all times. There we go. So we're just continuing a descent. There's our power station that we want. That's very important. That's a visual landmark for us. We're going to continue descending this aircraft. That's a nice gentle rate, and we're going for 3,000 feet. So now we are in the initial landing phase, initial landing approach. Maybe we want to give it a little bit more than that. So the initial approach procedures were on the 118 radial. I want you guys to also be on that 118 radial. Now this still hasn't come alive. This is interesting. Let's just try 393 and I want to see if 393 works. Just out of curiosity. 393 works, 353 does not. Is it because... Alright, hang on. What if I were to try 354? Out of absolute curiosity. Does 354 work? No. Anything that has a decimal doesn't seem to work on this aircraft. On the ADF. That's okay. That's okay because we are going to be coming in on an ILS, so it's not a problem. Right, we are still descending. We're now at 4,000 feet. Headed for 3,000 with some 20 miles to run. 16 miles, so I'll join you when we're close to the next stage. Right, we're just passing the airport now. There's the airport, there's the power station, that's the M1 below us, and we're just passing the airport, which means we are coming very close to turning in to line ourselves up with the runway. We still have about 6 or 7 miles to run? Hold on. We have almost 10 miles to run still until we get to turning in, but you can see how we're going to line up with the runway, and there is the power station that we use very often as our reference. Right, with roughly 4 miles to go, we've leveled out at 3,000 feet, and it's time to start considering slowing the aircraft down. So now we're going to slow the aircraft down. At this point, we're also going to start bringing our propellers up all the way, and our mixture all the way up too. Fuel pump is going to go on, or everything else is fine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be turning very shortly. So I'm going to move this into heading mode now. I'm going to switch this over to, if we decide to use a localizer, this is going to switch into navigation 1. That's if we decide to use a localizer. And we are going to be turning in to line up. And I am going to go to 393 for this, since the other one doesn't seem to be working. So I'm going to go to 393, and we are going to turn in and line up as best as we can with that, and then we'll just follow the ILS in. In fact, we might just do it with the ILS. So just waiting for the 24.8 nautical miles mark, and then we turn in. And that's a descent straight into East Midlands, so we can actually go to an approach plate now. Can't see the airport. That's okay though. At the end of the turn, we want to be at 2,000 feet. So we are going to start doing a descent too. And we can begin the turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be using the elevator to start bringing ourselves down, around, and lined up as best as we can whilst we descend. We're not going to put out flaps just yet. We're at a good speed though. And as a matter of fact, at this point, I am just going to switch off the autopilot. And I'm going to do this all myself. There we go. I think this is something we can do completely ourselves now. So now all we've got to do is line ourselves up. I have to find the airport too. Let's turn it in. I think we've got it about right. There's the airport. I can see it. Airfield in sight. Continuing the descent. And now we're just going to fly it in ourselves. We can switch this. Well, we don't need to really switch that DME over anymore. We are a little bit low, but that's okay. We're going to sort out our trim, line up with the runway, and bring this aircraft down. So we didn't perfectly work it out, but it was fairly close. Fairly close. So let that trim handle that. We will then go to cancel everything on that. We'll switch this over to DME 1 just for this bit of extra guidance. And we'll prepare to land the aircraft. So I think at this point, landing gears can come down. One stage of flaps and landing gears. Retrim the aircraft because obviously we've got the extra drag. So we need to retrim that aircraft. And we're maintaining about 90 knots, which is a good approach speed I feel for this aircraft. This is the approach speed that I prefer. All we've got to do is now just line the aircraft up. We know that there is a very slight crosswind, so we're just going to have to be careful of that. I'm actually going to give it a little bit more power, and let's clean up this glide first. As soon as we clean up the glide, there we go, glide's clean. Now we can go back into a descent. So looking for about 400 foot per minute. So this flight in total would take about 1.5 hours, I think. Obviously I've chopped it down in this video again, I'm sure you guys have noticed, but there should be about, in an aircraft like this, doing about 130 knots ground speed, about 1.5 hours, if not a little bit longer. Doing a good 90 knots all the way. Coming up on the glide, coming up on the localizer. Doing this all manually. Autopilot is off. Everything is tuned in as we want. Turning in now to line up properly. Final course is 271, I think. But we'll just do this as we need to do it. Coming up on the glide. Got a good view. Take a look around. Obviously there's no aircraft, but just in case, looking for any obstacles, looking for anything that's not as it should be. We are now on the glide. Bring that nose down. reduce the power somewhat. There we go. Again, not putting too many inputs, nothing too strong. Everything is good. You don't want to be forcing the aircraft into places. Don't need to do any of that. We just have to ease the aircraft in. That's all we've got to do. Just ease it in. I'm hardly putting any effort on the elevator. The elevator's got hardly any effort on it. It's mainly the yoke that I'm moving left and right more than I am anything up and down. So as you can see, we've got a very smooth descent going. I'm going to start reducing power a little bit more now. I want to try and land at about 80 knots, so I'm going to start reducing power as we come on final. And as I reduce power, I also want to be changing the descent rate. That's very important to remember. You want to change the descent rate so that you don't, as you slow down, you're not descending too quickly. Because as you slow down, you're going to cover less ground in a lateral direction for the same amount of ground on vertical if you're not, or for the same amount on a vertical. So you need to adjust for that. And as you can see, I am now adjusting for that to try and maintain the 2 whites and 2 reds all the way down. Again, not using the elevator, or minimal use of the elevator. This is all done on trim. Just line ourselves up a little bit better. Little bit better anyway. Just a smidge. There we go. I think I'm going to get to 3 reds again very soon, so just going to ease up a little bit more. There we go. Coming up over the M1 and the A453. Alright. It's alright, 3 whites are it's okay because there we go. Just slowing the aircraft down now. Not quite on the center line, so that's not something I'm happy about. Flare, reduce power, let the aircraft just ease in. And we are down, in fact, almost perfectly on the center line. Flaps in. And just let the aircraft roll out. And we'll take the next taxiway, which seems to be halfway down the runway. You can bring the mixture down now so we don't foul the engine. And we'll turn off here at Sierra. There you go, 1 hour 23 in the air. That's the estimated flight time. And we'll just turn off at Sierra and we'll just park it up at this point here. Fantastic. Right, we're clear of the runway. We'll just stop the aircraft just past the ILS critical area, which we are now past, so we'll just stop it just there. And that is the end of the second solo flight. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on the ground up advanced flight tutorials like this one. Leave a comment letting me know what you think. And if you do want me to check this video out and are already a Patreon, then do make a video of this and upload it and show me, and I'm more than happy to give you some feedback. If you're not a Patreon, please do consider joining me, even if it's just for 1 month. I'm happy to check out your videos once you've done that, and you can post it in my Discord server on the FST channel after you become a $5 Patreon. So I would really appreciate that. As you can imagine, this took a lot of time to make, to get the flight briefing, to find the perfect route, to actually fly the route, and then to edit it and bring it in to a video for you guys to see. So yeah, I would really appreciate some Patreon support there. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you guys next time in the ground up advanced flight tutorials, where we're going to see, maybe we'll do another solo flight, maybe we're going to start moving on to some other stuff. We'll just have to see, so make sure you tune in for that. I'll see you guys then.